Hey folks, this is Coach Shanelle. I am going to do a quick video today, or at least I'm going to try to make it quick. And this is day 7. For people who are new, we've been doing the Dream, Do, Done series, which is walking alongside you and going from dreaming to doing. I want to make sure that you're being held accountable to the things that you need. And so we're giving you some tips each day to make sure that you are moving forward towards your dreams. So today we're going to be talking about facing failures. And I needed to do this because oftentimes when I'm a success coach, people want to talk about success, but they're only framing success in all of these achievements. And so everybody wants to talk about the wins. Everybody wants to hear me talk about ways in which to motivate themselves. We always want to talk about all of the things that we're striving for in terms of goals, but nobody wants to discuss their failures. And here's something that a lot of people are surprised by is that when we're talking with clients and when I'm coaching women, one of the things that we talk about oftentimes is dealing with failures. And the reason why we do that is because that's a natural part of the journey to success. And oftentimes we don't feel comfortable talking about the things that we don't do so well and some of the things we might have fallen down on and failed at, but we want to talk about all the things that we do well. And everybody wants to present their best selves. And here's something that I have learned in my career journey and also in business is that failure is a part of the process. It's a part of the process. If you are not failing at anything, I would really question if you're really trying to do things that are outside of your comfort zone. Nobody's going to win at every single thing. And it's not to say that you're not a person who is capable. It's not to say that you're not a person that is focused just because you might encounter failure. Failure is a part of the process. There is nobody who's gotten to a high level of where they're trying to go in terms of their dreams that hasn't had a lot of successes and they haven't dealt with failures. That's a part of it. And so we wanted to talk about dealing with failures because that's going to be something that's going to come across if you're trying to reach another level of success. And so what happens when you face failure is going to really have a huge determination on how far you go because it is something that you're going to have to deal with. And so I wanted to talk about some ways in which you can respond to the failure to propel you to move forward and not allow the failure to be a stumbling block. Now, what are some things that happens as a result of failure? Now, when people start to see them going in the direction where they're not actually achieving what they want to, and they start to see that this might be a way in which they might fail, sometimes some people will use it and they'll learn from the situation. So you can use it and actually allow it to propel you by saying, what is it that I learned from this situation? One of the things that I have done to reframe my thinking is when I'm going through a situation and I see specifically if it's consistent failure, I ask God, what is it that you're trying to teach me through this situation? Because I've learned in life as I'm going along my journey that when something does not work out, it is still for my good. And sometimes when I'm trying to push something to work, it's usually something that God doesn't want me to be doing anyway. And it could be for a number of reasons. Sometimes it's not in alignment with my greater purpose. And so I'll be trying to push a certain thing and God's not actually directing me in that way at all. Sometimes it's because it's the wrong timing. I'm trying to push something before the other pieces are in place. But I have found on my journey that it's not about trying harder. It's more about being in alignment with the things that you're supposed to be doing. And so when I get into a point where I'm pushing, and I see too much resistance, I usually know that that's not what I'm called to be doing. And so I ask God, what is it that you want me to be learning from this situation? Because I know the things that I've gone through in my life has always been for my greater good. And it's always so that I can teach someone else later on. And so I ask God, what is it that you want me to learn from this? And I also thank him for the struggle that I'm going through. Now, I know some people are going to say, that's crazy. You thank him for the struggle. No, I do, because I know that he's doing it for my good. And I know that there's something I'm going to be learning from this. And so I thank him in the process of it. I thank him for the struggle. I thank him for the lesson that he's going to be teaching me. And I thank him for the victory in advance because I know that I'm going to be able to get out of it because I've been through too much stuff that I know that he can't have me stop at this particular point. And so I learned to reframe my thinking in that particular manner. And so that's some way that you can respond to it as well, is to reframe the thinking and think of failure as a way in which to learn a lesson. Look at what you can learn from it, because on your journey, you're going to be maturing. Not only is your business growing and maturing, but you are growing and maturing over time as well. And so you'll be learning things about yourself along the journey. Now, something that you'll hear me say over and over again is Owning a business is one of the best self-discovery programs that you will ever have. Again, one of the best self-discovery programs that you will ever have. You will learn more about yourself on an entrepreneurial journey than you will learn in any other spectrum. Why? Because being an entrepreneur is constantly moving forward, moving into areas that are not within your comfort zone, constantly putting yourself out there, constantly trying new ideas and testing them, dealing with some criticism that comes along with you trying new things and reaching outside of your comfort zone, and also being able to really deal with consistent ups and downs, successes and failures. It's ebbs and flows over and over and over and over and over again. And so part of your entrepreneurial journey is going to test you emotionally. It's going to test you spiritually. It's going to test the way in which you think. It's going to test the way in which you respond to things. And so you will learn more about yourself in this particular process than anything else that you've probably done before. And so you need to think about how you respond to these things. Now, here's a way in which a lot of people respond to failures. They ignore it. They try to act like it never happened. And to me, that is a trap. And let me tell you why. Because I believe that emotions are they're neither good nor bad. Emotions are signals that tell us things about ourselves, things that we value, things that might hurt us, and things that we need to learn or we might need to work on. And so when you bury emotions associated with failures, then they will resurface, and they'll resurface in very weird ways. And let me tell you an example of that. So for instance, when I was younger, I actually was bussed out to suburban environments. I had been in the city schools. They tested me. They thought that I had a capability that was higher than the environment that I was in. And so I got bussed out to suburban schools. And as a result of that, it put me in an environment where there was 2% minorities combined, right? And so I was in this new space and people were asking me all these crazy questions about how I looked and my hair and all of these different things. And I dealt with a lot of intense bullying and hatred and people pulling locks of hair and dealing with feeling less than in that environment. So I went from an environment where I didn't fit in because I had a capability that was above the students, and I went into another environment which I thought was going to be better, and it was from an educational standpoint, but it was very hard from a social standpoint. And so as a result of that, I tried to bury those feelings within me and keep striving for more. I developed this attitude that I was going to do and I was going to prove people wrong, and it didn't matter if I fit in and those sorts of things. Well, what ends up happening? That stuff came and resurfaced. When did it resurface? When I was getting into the mode of being a speaker. And I had to get in front of people. It reminded me of that whole idea of being in a new environment and having people look at you. And no matter what I was doing when I started to get on stage, I would have this moment where I thought that the people would think that I was less than. I thought that the people were judging me. I thought that the people might react a certain way. And so it would spook me to the point that I was so anxious that I didn't want to speak. And so I had to deal with where that was coming from. And so I say that to say this: you might have had something in your past that was a failure that you didn't make peace with, and it might be affecting you in your business right now. And so you have to look at, sometimes when you get gun shy about doing certain things, or you're anxious about certain things, or certain things bother you and you can't move forward, it might be something from your past that you never dealt with and you tried to bury it, and then it starts to resurface and it comes up in these really strange ways. And so I tell you this: don't think that you can just act like failure never happened. Failure is something that was supposed to teach you a lesson. You are building towards something good. And part of the building process is that you're going to see some things aren't necessarily going to work, but it's going to show you and push you in the direction that you're supposed to be going into. But you have to make peace with the things that didn't work so well. And so another way in which some people like to deal with failure is they like to play the blame game. And let me tell you, it's not going to work out very well. If you're looking at failure and you're saying, oh my gosh, it was this person's fault. And I can tell you, I've been there. You've been working on a collaboration. You say, well, they didn't turn their stuff in on time. Well, they weren't professional. I've had situations where, the person might have shut down their operation. And so all of us, as a result of that, had to feel the break of that. And then we're there left to do the customer service on that end because the other person shut down the operation. And still, I had to realize that when it comes to your own professional career, it comes to your entrepreneurial journey, that part of it is that you take ownership for your part. You always have to take ownership for your part. Hi, Valencia. How are you? And I've learned that it has nothing to do with them, but it has everything to do with you and your response. how you conduct yourself professionally, how you show up in that situation. And if you're a believer, it's all the more important. Why? Because people are looking to you to see how you respond as a person of faith, to see how you deal with adversity, to see how you deal with criticism, to see how you deal with a situation that's high pressure. They will be looking to you. I have had situations like that, and I've had people come up to me months later and say, you know what? I know that situation was crazy, but I really appreciated the way in which you handled that. I learned so much about you in the way that you responded to that. And people don't understand. Sometimes you'll end up winning more people over by the way in which you respond to the failure than you would have if you complained and blamed it. Sometimes God is trying to show you something in that particular moment about yourself and your response to things. And it might be that you are illustrating the way in which you conduct yourself, the way in which you stand out, the way in which you have a value system that's high. And it can be showing an example to other people. And sometimes you end up working with those people later on, but it's all in the way in which you respond. And so I've learned to claim which part is mine. And here's another step now, because it doesn't make the things that they did go away, right? So I learned I have to forgive them for whatever it is that they did. Because if you are holding on to things, it will stop you. It won't stop them. It'll stop you. And so I talk to people about forgiveness. And when I say forgiveness, here's two things that I recommend. Not only do you forgive the person, but you need to let it go. Again, you need to forgive and let it go. I didn't say forget. I said let it go. Drop it. It means you don't keep bringing it up. It means you don't put it in that person's face. It means you don't keep going back to it. You don't rant about it on Facebook. You really need to let it go. And here's a third step. And I'm gonna be completely honest, especially with believers. Not only should you do that, but I personally recommend that you pray for the success of that particular person and pray that they get the healing that they need in that particular situation. Let me tell you why. Because sometimes when people are doing things that aren't in alignment with what they say that they are about, sometimes they are going through a particular situation that they need to heal from so that they can get to a point that they learn better life skills, that they learn to be more better prepared professionals, that they learn how to handle situations better. And so part of maturity is understanding that sometimes people will fall short, and that you need to be still in a mode that you're willing to get down and solve things, and realizing that they are spiritual battles. It has nothing to do with that person, but it has everything to do with what they might be going on with spiritually. And so I get down on my knees and I go into prayer and say, God, can you help them with whatever it is that they might be struggling with that might have caused this? I ask for healing for that particular thing. I pray that they be able to learn how to do things differently. I pray that they be able to have success in their business. I pray that you usher into something that's a better fit for them. I pray for the success of them. And if they're a person that has a family, I pray for the family too, because the family may be affected by the way in which that person is dealing with and doing business. And so I pray a prayer of protection over their family as well. And it's a maturity. You have to learn that it's not about you. Sometimes you might be in that situation because God wanted you to be the person that prayed for that person. They wanted you to be the person that shows them that people do it differently. They wanted you to be in that position so that they can see that there's another way to do business. Sometimes it's about that as well. And so it's all about the way in which you respond. Now, what are some other things that you can do as a result of responding to failure? Is that you can learn that this might be a way to show you that there's a different direction to go in. So let me give you an example. So when I first started out in business, I was trying to do this really huge multi-day event. It was called the Empowering Her Summit. I was all about bringing women together. I wanted to do interactive sessions. I wanted women to really walk away with skill sets that they need. I was in my 20s, so I was doing this literally all by myself. And I started going all around town. I went to 100 networking events. I'm not kidding you, 100 networking events trying to promote this summit. And I had people who wanted to speak, and I had hired speakers. I had gotten the venue, all of that. And I had gotten advertisement done, all of these different things that people tell you that you needed to do. Well, on the way to it, women started asking me to do these small training sessions. And so I started doing small interactive training sessions, and those took off and they were free. It was called Building Your Business. But the Empowering Her Summit was gaining traction very slowly. And it got to a point where, you have to look at your budget and say, is this feasible or not feasible? And so I ended up pulling the plug on the Empowering Her Summit, but I kept the Building Your Business going. And what I learned as a result of that process is, one, that when you're doing a huge a huge project or even a huge product, you can't do that alone. I had to learn that. I had to learn that even if I had a large amount of skill and capability, that you will stretch yourself way too far by trying to do everything yourself. And so if I had a team behind me, even if they were volunteers, I would have been able to pull it off. But I realized it was going to stretch me too much, both emotionally and financially, to be able to do that. I also learned that it's going to need a little bit more time to be able to grow an event of that size. And although I had the pieces in place in terms of structure, in terms of building an audience and a following, I was going to need more time. And then I learned that for me, a good comfort zone is to have intimate gatherings of women, not to necessarily do a multi-day event. It doesn't mean that I don't have the capability of doing it. However, my strength is in being able to connect with women and have a personal connection. And that usually happens more so in an intimate setting. And so those were things I had to learn. Now, did it hurt that that particular event, the Empowering Her Summit, didn't work out? Yes. Did I learn a lot of things from it? Absolutely. I learned a lot about myself. I learned about how I work with people. I learned that I needed people in order to do big things like that. I learned that I could accomplish something that seemed like it was impossible, and I can get that much done on my own. And it actually earned me a lot of respect for the other things that I did, because not only did women say, I appreciate that you tried to do that and you got so close, and I think you should try it again, but a lot of women came alongside me and said, if you decided to do something else, I will support you, because I see how hard you put work and effort into this. I see that you're really passionate about it. And although that event didn't work, I'll help you on your other things. And so it won me a lot of support for other projects that I had. And so I learned a lot about myself, and I was able to learn and grow from that situation, as opposed to me saying, oh my gosh, I couldn't get it done. All this money I put into it, all this work I put into it, it didn't happen. And I'm so disappointed in myself. I didn't do that. I learned to see the lesson in that particular failure. I learned to reframe the situation and my mindset and my thinking. And I learned a better fit and direction for myself. And if I hadn't gone through that process, I might not have learned that, because the other events were asked or requested by the audience that was following the Empowering Her Summit. And so I learned not only was it something that I was able to do, but it was something that the audience actually wanted. They wanted something more intimate. They wanted something where they could talk more to people. They wanted something that was a smaller gathering. And so I learned to respond to my audience, and not to do something that I thought was the best thing, but to respond to the things that my audience wanted. And so when you're dealing with trying to reach a big dream, trying to move forward on your goals, trying to go on this journey of success, realize that it's not just about the wins. Sometimes it's about the failures as well. You need to learn from both avenues. And here's something that I'm going to be completely a little bit hard on about, is that I wish that we can get to a space as women to be able to discuss the whole view of what we got through in order to achieve success. I oftentimes hear these great stories about how everybody persevered and how they got to a level of success and how much money they're making in 6 figures and 7 figures. I see these glossy photo shoots, and I'm not knocking it. I love those things. However, sometimes when we tell our story, we forget to talk about the times that we failed. Like when you got to a point of making that particular membership program a 6 or 7 figure program, did you talk about the times when you were trying to sell those $25 courses and nobody would buy them? Talk about that too. Talk about the times where you were trying to get speaking gigs and you couldn't get them before you get to the point of being that keynote speaker. Tell about the times where you were trying to pitch yourself, because there's some women who are following you who need to hear that story too. They need to hear about the things that you went through in life. They need to hear about if you had times where you battled with your self-esteem. They need to hear about if you got out of an abusive relationship. They need to hear about the times in which you might have been financially strained. They need to hear about the projects that you did that might have failed on the way to finding the one that did work, so that people can realize that that's a part of the process. But if we tell the end of the journey and we don't talk about it being a journey and talking about the things that we do, then we're painting an unrealistic picture of what success looks like. And for me, I hate that. I absolutely hate that. And what ends up happening is we're preparing this next generation of women to think that they just put up a web page, that they just put up some glossy photos, and then they're going to be a 6 or 7 figure earner. And that's not the case. And we all know that. We all know that, but we won't tell the backstory. And so one of the things that I did in December was I did this movement called the Pretty Powerful Movement. And it was aimed at telling the stories behind women's journey to success. And what we did was I had this idea that I wanted women to be able to tell their stories, and I wanted them to tell it on video because video is a way to personalize it. I didn't want people just writing the stories. And so on video, we had women sign up for a 5-minute time slot. Why? Because people's attention spans can be a little bit low. And I wanted women to not get into a point of starting to promote themselves too much, because you get more than that, women can start to promote themselves a little bit too much. And I gave them topics that I pre-selected. They only found out the topic a few days before. And so they were able to share from these different areas. And I specifically gave them questions that would allow them to draw from a personal story. And so as a result of talking about some of these things and their journey to success, women were able to share from the heart and show how they got to be these powerful women, how they got to build these movements, how they were able to build these big brands. And I thought it was a wonderful experience because you got to see what they learned before they got to where they are. And so women started to talk about things like dealing with cancer. One woman talked about how she was involved in gangs and how she got out of that environment and ended up going into ministry. Another girl talked about being in a car accident and how she had all these, sustained all these really horrible injuries. And that they came to the scene and they thought she was going to be dead on arrival. So she told that story and how it led her to realize that when she had a new lease on life, that she had to be able to declare some boundaries, to take care of herself, to learn those sorts of things. And there was another woman who talked about how she's a traveling speaker. She's an internationally known speaker, and that she was a time management expert before that. That's how she got started, and how she was at a venue and they asked her if she needed a wake-up call because they had been out so late the night before. And she thought that she was in a space that she could do everything by herself. So she told them she's fine and she was going to wake up on time and she had it all together. And when she set her alarm, she set it for PM instead of AM. And so the time management expert was late. And so she learned from that experience. And so she had to call these people who were depending on her to be the time management expert to tell them that she was running late to the venue. And so she lost all of these jobs that she had lined up because people started to question her credibility. And so she told the story about not getting to a point where you think you can't learn anything from anybody else and not have to need anybody's help on your journey. And so those are the types of stories that women were able to tell as a result of this Pretty Powerful movement. And I thought it was amazing because we first got a chance to see that women who had built these powerful movements that were strong, that looked like they were invincible, actually dealt with a lot of things behind the scenes. And so we don't tell those stories enough. And so as a result of that, people can not only hear that you were doing amazing things in your business, doing amazing things in your brand, doing amazing things with the area of purpose or the calling that was on your life, but that you had to go through some things in order to get to that place. And so I think we need to tell those stories a little bit more because failure is a part of the process. And so with that, I do want to go ahead and close out. Again, this is part of the Dream Do Done series. We'll be doing this every day throughout the year to make sure that you're moving towards your goals. We'll be doing and concentrating on one step each day to move you closer. It's a way in which you can hold yourself accountable. It's some things that you can take into consideration to think about. And it's also to keep you moving and actively moving towards your dreams, because we know it's not just about the vision, but it's about the implementation. And oftentimes people seem to fall short on implementation. They want the big dream, but they don't want to do the work required behind it. And so these are meant to be videos to keep you encouraged on your journey, to keep you thinking, and to keep you in a place where you're moving towards your purpose, because we all know that being able to do something that is a big dream is going to stretch you outside of your comfort zone, but that it's still within your reach. And so you have to reach forward towards the things that you want in life and be able to take the action steps that are necessary for you to be able to do something new and different. With that being said, let me close out. This is Coach Shanelle, success coach and a speaker. I've been advocating for women since 2009. I am wholeheartedly committed to your success, and I want to provide you access to quality resources that help you along the way. If you need my assistance, feel free to put information below or to reach me in my message box. My contact information is also on my page, and it's also above in the text header. Take care, have a wonderful day, and I look forward to talking with you soon. Bye.